Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Charles Manson.
You should love your enemy. Hate your friend? No, look out for your friend, because your enemy might try to get your friend on in, and then they would play some game against something you might want to dream on. Love sees it all and it's just there, in the skies, in the air, it's everywhere. It's all being revealed to you, who are true and in your magic motion. You will see just how you could be so phony with yourself, lying to someone else, telling someone else you don't belong to no one. But in all, you don't even have a friend. No, not one you could really let within, because everyone laughed and called you crazy fools. They never needed anybody, but they never upped any rules.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 45 of the Serial Chillers podcast. I am your host, Jesse, and thank you for stopping by. I am joined in the intro with co-host Greg.
Hello, happy to be here.
Greg, we've got a little Charles Manson playing softly below us here. How do you feel about that?
Officially or unofficially? Because officially, I am against it. He's a terrible human being, and all the Manson fanboys and fangirls out there are wrong for idolizing a cult leader. Unofficially, music's not bad.
Yeah,
I kind of jam to it.
It's decent.
Yeah.
So it's if it's not obvious by now, it should be. Today's episode, Charles Manson. It's kind of been
wild man.
I know it's been a little bit of a long time coming here, right?
Yes, it has been. I mean, it's something that people have been asking for it. Anytime we've teased an episode coming up,
it's also
that seems to be the biggest guess.
It's also slightly been opposed in ways, because technically we are covering him, and he's not technically a serial killer, but it's our show, and we will do with it what we please, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So welcome to episode 45 is what we really have to say. We're kind of excited to jump into this story. It is so chock full of information. There's no way we could have possibly got it all in here, but we gave it our best, and we told some of the probably we would say best highlights in our opinion. So
lowlights.
Yeah, lowlights is probably a better story for that. So any last 5 seconds, Greg?
Enjoy.
Yeah, everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 45 of the Serial Chillers podcast. Welcome everybody to episode 45 of the Serial Chillers podcast. Doing it a little differently today.
And twice,
if we might. We are live on location far across the internet in Greg's bunker. I traveled like Mike TV and Willy Wonka. That's how I got here.
had to shrink down and get X-rayed
pixelated
over.
And yeah, that's why it took us a little longer on the live event. If you joined us, this will be like 2 weeks later from that day. But if you joined us, the Mike TV thing, that's my excuse. So we're here in the bunker. We're hoping the reception holds up while we're in here. The rations are plenty. And I guess I should ask, how goes it, co-host Greg?
It goes well. We're doing big things, enjoying ourselves.
As always, we find ourselves somewhere in a secret location having an enjoyable time.
Yeah. Are you live across the internet, or is this?
Yeah, we're both live across the internet, I think.
So that's why we have just a webcam going of your garage.
Yes, that's precisely it. Studio,
right.
Sorry. All right. We got this. So, special episode. It's been a long time coming. Actually, Greg and I did a show before this, about 49 episodes, I think, of Anxious Extroverts. And this will be episode 45 here. So what? Do the math for me.
That's 94?
94. And it's our first time recording together.
Weird, huh?
That's kind of big. It's kind of big first time. And we're kind of like not facing each other too, so it feels a little bit like you're just on the internet anyway.
I could turn the camera on. You could see me sitting behind you.
No, then I'll be running. Squish your head. Well, it's a special episode. Some of you guys might have got Greg's hint the day of the live event, and it was pretty easy if you caught it. If not, today we're doing. It seems like it's going to be mainly based on a singular character, but by the time we're all said and done here, this is going to be an entire group of people. A family, if you will.
Oh, I think I know who it is.
I liked your acting, like you didn't know before this.
No, I don't know who it is.
Oh man,
I think I know.
All right, so
is it a family?
It is a family.
It's the Partridge Family.
Dang, come on, get happy. So, why mince words? We're riding the high off the live event, and we're ready to rock and roll. Today's killer and family, Greg.
Yes.
Charles Manson and the Manson family.
Yes, the Manson family band.
Yeah, that's how we'll use that here.
Yeah.
So let's talk Charles Manson. Now, we'll start off at the top by saying Charles Manson could be a podcast in and of itself. I know we're going to have to omit things, and we did our best to include the most important of things, but
yeah.
This is the quick wrap, let's call it, because we honestly I like to throw a lot of stuff on the notes that I'll pull in and copy and paste and kind of have everything in one place, and it started at 26 pages. So I didn't want to go that way. So let's just let's give it a start. No quiz today because we have no contestants because Greg and I are together. That's the special part of today, right?
Right.
Yes. So Charles Mills, or is it Millis? I believe he pronounced it Millis.
I thought it was Miles.
I think it's Millis.
Okay.
Charles M. Manson was born November 12th, 1934 in Cincinnati, Ohio to Kathleen Maddox, who is 16 years old. He actually was born no name Maddox. What a good name to start off with, right?
Absolutely. That's just setting your kid up to be a hobo.
Yeah. You either setting him up to be a hobo or just giving him a lot of freedom. Like when he's old enough, he'll decide what his name should be.
He's going to ride the rails and eat beans from a bindle.
Yes. There are different sources on who the father may have been. But for the most part, it's said to be Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr. But when Kathleen informed him that she was pregnant, he left town on, quote, army business.
Hell yeah. I've left town on army business before too.
Oh my God.
I've never even been enlisted.
I'm not a proud man. So he leaves town on army business. And it is said that he was a little bit of a con man because he let people believe he was a colonel, and he may not have been anywhere near that rank. So
he was, as far as I know, he was never even enlisted.
So he too was leaving on army business.
I'm going off to army, mother.
So he lets people believe he's a colonel. He leaves on army business, and a few months later, Kathleen realizes he's probably not coming back, huh?
That was the early 1900s version of I'm going to get smokes.
Yes. A few months before Charles Manson, or no names, Maddox is born, Kathleen married a laborer from a dry cleaners named Eugene Manson, where Charles will get that famous namesake. What if Charles never got this moniker and remained Maddox? Do you think years later we'd be talking about the rumor of Marilyn Maddox removing some of his ribs?
Probably. I think we'd also be talking about the Maddox family band. I don't think your name makes you a serial killer, but definitely a serial killer makes a name for themselves. So
Charles did a pretty decent job, even though I guess technically not a serial killer.
Yeah.
It depends on if you believe in what a lot of people believe in as far as the brainwashing and whatnot, which we'll touch on that. We'll touch on brainwashing and how to do it. What? So, it wasn't. It wasn't long before Kathleen realized that being a mom wasn't really for her either. Charles is now known as Charles Manson, but she quickly gets a divorce from Eugene Manson. April 30th, 1937. Charlie was 3 at the time. And after this divorce, Kathleen would start disappearing for days at a time with her brother. His name is Luther, and they're going out and just going on benders. So it's Charles doesn't remember. He's 2 or 3 at this time, but his mom is just disappearing for weeks at a time. And I think that he's staying with either babysitters or I think at one point with an aunt.
He was staying with family. He was staying with
I think there was an aunt. There was
aunts
a very
and
helpful
grandparents.
aunt. Yes.
It was just various family members who they were well,
it's better than him being on the streets.
Right. Better than him being in the clubs with us.
Right. So they leave him in the care of the family then, and the divorce is granted after a court accepted her charges of gross neglect. So Eugene is a gross neglector? Huh? August 1st, 1939, Kathleen and Vicky, who was Charles' uncle's girlfriend, so the brother that she was always leaving with, Kathleen and Vicky were out drinking with an acquaintance named Frank Martin and decided it was a good idea to rob him. They decided it was a better idea to get Luther, who was Charles' uncle, involved. So they called Luther up. And unfortunately, due to the fact that they were very dumb, they were caught and arrested within 10 hours and on trial 7 weeks later. Luther got 10 years. Kathleen received 5 for her part in the crime. Chuck ended up with his aunt and uncles and other family members at this time, too. So she's doing 5 years.
Yeah, and he's getting passed around from aunt to uncle to grandparents to cousin to whoever's available.
Mother of the Year Award, Kathleen Maddox.
Heard it here first, folks. That's how you get that award.
Yeah, you just do what Kathleen Maddox did. No, you don't.
Abandon your child with no name.
Please don't do that.
Or whatever.
So he talks in a few of the documentaries, and some of them do use the same footage, but in a lot of the documentaries that I watch, he talks about remembering visiting his mom in the prison visiting room. He has very vivid memories of going to and seeing his mother incarcerated. So
he got adjusted to that life early.
Very early, pre-kindergarten early.
There you go.
Right. Start 'em young, folks. Start 'em young. She was paroled in 1942. Charles Manson said it was the happiest time of his life. It was a good thing, too, because in short order, he's going to become quite an asshole.
That asshole.
In 1943, he's now 9 years old, and we're in Charleston, West Virginia, which looks like where Charles Manson comes from.
Yeah.
Chuck is constantly truant from school. He's never there. Kathleen doesn't seem to care at all. She just is out kind of doing her thing anyway, drinking all night, doing drugs some more. She's arrested for grand larceny, which in Virginia is theft of anything over $1,000. Right after that grand larceny, they up and moved to Indianapolis, where she married a man with the last name of Lewis. Don't ask for a first name. We don't give those things out here, apparently. Okay?
Well, he didn't have one.
He was a no-name? His name was just Lewis?
Yeah, it was just Lewis. He and Charles Manson had that in common, where he was... this dude's name was just Lewis. Everybody was just like, Lewis! And he'd just show up and...
He was like Mr. Wolf.
I guess.
Lewis? Yes, I'm here. What do you need? So, okay, well, then she married Lewis, no name. No name Lewis. I like that.
That'll work.
He reacted, Charles that is, quite appropriately to the marriage. He really loved his stepdad, and he started calming down and behaving a little more. No, he started stealing things. He started going to school even less often, and between the ages of 9 and 13, he started stealing from stores and eventually his own home.
He just saw stuff and was like, that's nice. I want that. And took it from himself and then put it back in his room.
Mine.
This is mine now.
He just went and stole No Name Lewis's shoes. He stole No Name Lewis's shirt.
He took that dude's first name.
He doesn't even have one anymore. In 1947, his mother is getting fed up with his shit. He is not a good kid, not a good boy. She decides to send him to a foster home, but unfortunately, she cannot find one that is suitable for her little baby. The next best thing was the Gibalt.
Yeah, I think it was Gibalt or Gibalt.
The Gibalt School for Boys in Terre Haute, Indiana. It was a school for delinquents run by the Catholic priests, so it was on the up and up. He ran away from the school. I think it was several times. It wasn't just once or twice.
Well, but the first time.
Yes. Yeah. He went home from the school missing his mother. Still not wanting him around, she takes him back to the school. She sold him up the river.
Well, which is fucked up. Like, you go home because you're like, Mom, I miss you. Like, remember, he's only like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
He's just, Mom, I miss you. I'm so sorry. And comes home and she's like, no, sorry, fucko, you're going back.
I think he was only 13 if my math is correct.
Yeah, so he's young and impressionable.
Right.
Needs his mom.
So he spends Christmas of 1947 with his uncle in McMeechin. Man, I'm getting ripped up. In McMecken, a small town in West Virginia.
Fucked.
As of 2016, the population in the town was only 1,819. So we had like a high school bigger than that, Greg.
Yeah.
While he was staying with his uncle there, he was caught stealing a firearm. That's a pretty serious crime. While caught stealing the firearm, this was the thing, and I actually kind of noticed it myself and then heard like an officer or a lawyer, somebody mention it in one of the documentaries, is that he would get caught for what seemingly smaller crimes, but he just chose the worst possible ways to do them so that they would carry the heaviest penalties. We're going to hear later about how he bounces a treasury check, but because it's a treasury check, it's a federal thing, and blah, blah, blah. So he does 15 years for a $42 check or something. Yeah. So that's kind of Charles's way, we're going to find out. He has a
fuck it up and fuck it up big.
Yes. We're not giving anything to Charles Manson here, but he did not grow up with a good childhood. That was not that was not an option for him. So after stealing the firearm, he goes back to the Gibalt school, but runs away and goes back to Indianapolis, but learned his lesson and did not go home to his mother. Instead, at what is he, 12, 13, he rents a room and supports himself. Oh, man, what did he do, Greg? This would be a quiz question right here.
Okay, so for 250 points, did he, A, hook? Was he a gentleman of the night at 13? B, steal? C, forge checks? Or D, I don't know, what's D? All the above. And the answer is he stole.
Yes,
he stole.
He was
a thief.
He was burglarizing to support himself. It was the only thing he knew. He's supporting himself as like a preteen here, renting this room, burglarizing in the evening to make his money. He gets caught and a judge sentences him to Boys Town facility in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, at this time, this is probably the best thing that could have happened to Charles because Boys Town, still a thing, by the way. Mm-hmm. Looked it up. This is from the Boys Town website. So this is essentially a home to rehabilitate young men.
It's for troubled youths.
Yes. So this is directly from their website. I've got a little short 3-paragraph here. It says, Boys Town believes today, as our founder did 100 years ago, that every child deserves a future. Every family deserves to stay together, and every community deserves to thrive. And we believe that all of those things should be achievable without regard to race, religion, or background. So, for the young man dodging gunfire on the streets just to get to school, the family torn apart by substance abuse, and the community crumbling from neglect and social disorder, Boys Town offers hope. But we offer hope as more than just an abstract concept. We substantiate it with programs and solutions grounded in our deep experience and supported by our decades of research. Though we have grown to become a national organization that reaches communities from coast to coast, and our scope has expanded to include in-home family counseling, healthcare, and programs to rebuild at-risk schools. Boys Town remains forever driven by our founder's singular vision, and with your help, we will do so well into our second century and beyond.
So my only reaction to that, which, I mean, all that's very fine and good, but my only reaction to that is get a better PR guy and have him synopsize that for you. Instead of 3 paragraphs, which were
It was actually 4.
paragraphs.
It was actually 4 because I took the top paragraph off, which it felt like it didn't need with this.
I would say instead of having 4 paragraphs, then, which is practically a fucking book, they could just say, you know, like Boys Town, turning boys into men or some shit. I mean, it's something less creepy than that, I suppose.
And then you would just expect them all to go in and come out singing, "I swear."
No.
So
There's no Z in Boys Town.
yes. So he's at Boys Town, and the thing about Boys Town too, it was a big enough deal that in his local paper, like he was like, there was an article about him, like, local judge sends local boy to Boys Town. Like, he's finally getting his big break. He's always been unlucky in his ways, and he's getting to go to the reform school that's going to take care of him.
Boys Town sounds like just a little village that's run by like prepubescent guys.
I just always think of,
like, they're like, I like to think that they're in there like running the butcher shop and working at the bank, and the suits are too big.
I was gonna say, I think very like Pleasure Island from Pinocchio, like just you know,
I got
a lot of boys, just
smoking
a lot of
cigars
boys
and turning into donkeys.
Yes, that's precisely it. So he made quick friends with a young man, Mr. Nielsen, and 4 days into his stay in Boys Town, the two of them stole a car and obtained another firearm. They robbed a grocery store and a casino before making their way to Peoria, Illinois, the home of Nielsen's uncle. So, he's like 15 years old?
Yeah.
These guys are the most hardened of criminals. And think about it, too. He was into schools, at 7 years old?
Yeah.
And he's pretty much just been nonstop since then.
Yeah, but he also had a severe case of don't give a fuck.
Yep.
And really had no connection with anyone, it seems. Like, he loved his mom, but then his mom didn't seem to care for him. So she cast him out. He didn't hang around. He probably, I feel like, between getting passed around with his uncles and stuff or uncles and aunts and grandparents and family members and stuff to live with, he probably didn't get to form a bond with anyone, so he doesn't really have any sentimentality.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a cromulent word.
It's perfectly cromulent. So they meet up with Nielsen's uncle, and this guy takes them under their wing and shows them how they can be professional thieves like he was. So, you know, he knows that these boys, they've just escaped from was it Boys Town?
Yeah.
Boys Club, whatever it is. Boys
Town.
Boys deal. They just escaped from Boys Town, and he knows that their life is pretty much going to be that of an ex-con for, from here on out. So he shows them the ropes of how to do that, because it can be tough out there. Not to say that every ex-con continues to burglarize for work, but
it's hard out here for him.
It is hard out there. We do understand. So one night after breaking into a grocery store, Charles was caught and sentenced to another reform school. He claims while he was incarcerated there, this was his worst kind of experiences as a child. He claims that he was raped by another boy at the encouragement of a staff member of this reform school. To protect himself while he was there, he played what he referred to as the crazy game. When he felt attacked and unable to defend himself physically, he would flail his arms and scream incoherently as if to appear insane. So
that kind of followed him all the way through life too. He developed that at a young age and then just kind of held on to that.
There's one interview where they ask him Charles, if you, describe yourself, and he just kind of goes and just starts making
starts grunting and making all the weird faces and
He's
I wonder if was that before or after the swastika.
I think that was after. There was a swastika on his head during that, almost for sure. So the crazy game, but you can picture it, like the guys get near him, he just starts flailing around. Wow, man, I'm a crazy guy.
Didn't we have a friend like that who swore up and down the best thing to do during a street fight was take off all your clothes and...
We could have. I try to forget people like that, though.
Yeah.
So eventually, after many unsuccessful attempts at escape, he was able to break out with a few other boys in 1951. At that time, they stole a car and proceeded to rob gas stations on their way to California, but they were arrested in Utah. Kind of close, I guess. They were transporting the stolen car. Because they transported the stolen car across state lines, it became an even larger felony. Charles was sent to Washington, D.C.'s National Training School for Boys and was given an aptitude test. His IQ was a slightly above average 109, but he was illiterate. He was deemed as, quote, aggressive antisocial. After reviewing with a psychiatrist, he was transferred to a minimum security prison called National Honor Camp. Doesn't it sound like an honor to be there?
It sounds like another Boys Town farce that a judge assigned him to. I don't know how he keeps getting all these breaks where they're like, dude, here, just try this school. You'll be fine. And it doesn't work. He Shawshanks out of there. And so they're like, okay, try this school. And he Shawshanks out of there. And it seems like that's the essence of Charles Manson, is that he's fine being where he is until somebody tells him he has to be somewhere, and then he doesn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, and he's 17 at this point. So we're talking about just like an entire childhood and teenage years.
So if he's 17, that's 4 solid years of being in and out and like just on the run the whole time.
Right.
And that's when you said they transported the car across state lines, that's an example of him fucking it up more than it really should have been fucked up.
So while he was in the National Honor Club Boys Town deal place where he keeps getting put, his aunt would visit him and vouch to him to get him released. She said that she would give him a place to stay once he was out and help him find work and to get on his feet. His parole hearing was scheduled for February of 1952, and he would have made it, but he was caught raping another inmate at knife point. So either knife point or a blade. It was one of the like a razor blade.
Yeah. Either way, apparently this inmate didn't want to fight back too much.
Yeah.
That's bad.
So he was transferred to a federal reformatory instead of getting out. He becomes a model resident at the reformatory. His education level rises from that of a 4th grader to that of a 7th grader, and this impresses the staff. In 1954, he is paroled from the reformatory. After temporarily honoring a parole condition that he lived with his aunt and uncle in West Virginia, Manson moved in with his mother in the same state. January of 1955. So he's back with his mom.
That's good. Well, I mean, for him.
He
thinks.
Yeah, I think he thinks that. So in January of 1955, he married a hospital waitress named Rosalie Jean Willis. Charles said that for this very short moment in his life, he was very happy. He supported their marriage with odd jobs and very often auto theft. Around October of 1955, about 3 months after he and his pregnant wife arrived in Los Angeles in a car that he had stolen in Ohio, he was again charged with a federal crime for taking the vehicle interstate.
Dumbass. Learn, dude.
Yes,
Learn.
Just buy a $200 junker. After a psychiatric evaluation, he was given 5 years probation. His subsequent failure to appear at a Los Angeles hearing on an identical charge filed in Florida resulted in his March 1956 arrest in Indianapolis. His probation was revoked. He was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment at Terminal Island, San Pedro, California. That one does not sound as appealing.
Yeah, that's not
as
that's
the
not
other
a Boys
two
Town
did.
facility.
No, Terminal Island.
How long am I there for?
You don't want to know.
Forever.
So while he is in prison, Rosalie actually gives birth to their first son, well, their only son, Charles Manson Jr. Let's hope for him that he got a name change later in life.
Nope.
During his first year at Terminal Island, Manson received visits from Rosalie and his mother, who are now living together in Los Angeles. In March of 1957, the visits from his wife ceased. His mother informed him Rosalie was living with another man. Less than 2 weeks before a scheduled parole hearing, Manson tried to escape by stealing a car. He was subsequently given 5 years probation, and his parole was denied. He received 5 years parole in September 1958, the same year in which Rosalie received a decree of divorce. So I don't think he ever gets to see Charles Manson Jr. I don't think he was was part
he
of
doesn't
that
sound
life.
like he was. Well, and I mean, I guess good for Charles.
Good
Manson
for Charles
Jr.
Manson Jr.
Yeah.
By November, he was pimping out a 16-year-old girl and was receiving additional support from a girl with wealthy parents. So he had a sugar mama 16-year-old and a 16-year-old that he was pimping.
That
Yeah.
seems morally wrong.
Right. Charlie didn't care.
That's
In
bad.
September 1959, he pleaded guilty to charge of attempting to cash a forged U.S. Treasury check. So there we go. I want to say that it was a ridiculously small amount, like a $48 check.
It's $16.
Come on. He received a 10-year suspended sentence and probation after a young woman with an arrest record for sex work made a tearful plea before the court that she and Manson were deeply in love and would marry if Charlie were freed. So this lady just came in and said, like, I love him. Please,
You
does
know,
that work?
I don't know why or how so much, but Manson was apparently like a super likable guy. He didn't, I've never, obviously never met him.
Right.
But he seemed to have a lot of charisma.
Oh, yeah.
And like, he would show up at parties and he was the guy who would show up like with drugs and chicks. And
that's exactly right.
And they were like, yay,
Yeah.
Charlie's here.
Yeah, and later we'll talk about it a little, but he kind of gets in with like some celebrities and some musicians, and he starts being the guy that shows up and supplies.
But
drugs
he
and
wanted
chicks.
more, and it's a whole thing.
Charlie always wants more, so
More for Charlie.
that'll come a little later. He's still fairly young at this point, 18 years old. So, okay. So the girl gives the deeply in love speech before the year's end. The woman did in fact marry Manson, possibly so testimony against him would not be required of her.
Though, like Arrested Development, where a husband and
Yeah.
wife can't be tried for the same crime.
But a husband and wife, I believe, don't have to testify against one
Yeah,
another.
that's the joke.
Yeah, I did like that when he's
the worst
in
fucking lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. Henry Winkler. The woman's name was Leona. As a sex worker, she had used the name Candy Stevens. So this is Charlie's new flame. After Manson took her and another woman from California to New Mexico for purposes of sex work, here's another one for you, Greg. He was held and questioned for violation of the Mann Act. So the Mann Act is an act that protects essentially the transport of slaves. So,
Sex trafficking and all that.
Correct. So she, apparently this sex work that they're doing is against their will as they are being transported across state lines.
Okay. So basically, you can't take anyone across state lines for the purposes of sex work
Or slavery.
The
Mann Act was like, as far as my very short research shows, is old and has its roots in
slavery.
In slavery.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
That's real. Well, good for the Mann Act.
Right. So he was released. He evidently suspected rightly that the investigation had not ended. So he knew that they let him go, but that they were still looking at him. So he disappears in violation of his probation, and a bench warrant was issued. In April 1960, an indictment for violation of the Mann Act followed. He's arrested in Laredo, Texas in June when one of the women was arrested for sex work, so she gave him up. Charles Manson was returned to Los Angeles for violation of his probation on the check cashing charge. He was ordered to serve his 10-year sentence. In July 1961, after a year spent unsuccessfully appealing the revocation of his probation, Manson was transferred from the Los Angeles County Jail to the United States Penitentiary at McNeil Island. They're starting to sound more and more official, each one, right?
Yeah, it's like he's leveling up.
Then progressively, he gets through the boss battles.
The boss prison where he actually has to fight the warden.
He has to fight a prison. Although the Mann Act charge had been dropped, the attempt to cash the Treasury check was still a federal offense. In September of 1961, he has an annual review and noted that he had a tremendous drive to call attention to himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we said, he's pretty charismatic, so I feel like that probably had a lot to do with it. But also, he was, I don't know, wasn't this the early stages of him trying to like round people up?
Yeah, but this is also like Charlie Manson is like your crazy dirty uncle. Like
Hey, look at me, look what I can do.
like when you watch interviews with him and you hear him talking, like You know, there's one where they asked him about his mother, and he's like, "My name is Kathleen Maddox. I'm a 15-year-old homeless woman. I do not have a husband. My husband is named Colonel." You know, he's just like very bizarre. He's very, very over the top. It's like going to Thanksgiving and getting Uncle Steve like 3 extra beers, and he's like, "You guys want some more? Get out with the," and he's kind of, you know, starts.
Guys want to see me fit my fist in your mouth?
He starts talking a little gibberish, getting a little inappropriate. That's what Charles Manson is like all the time.
Charles.
Yep. In 1963, Leona is granted a divorce, in the pursuit of which she alleged that she and Manson had a son, Charles Luther. So another son for Charles from a different woman. In June of 1966.
But there's that name Luther again. That's just kind of weird.
That's it. Well, that's his dad's name, right?
No, it was.
Oh, his uncle's name.
Yeah. So that's just, they're not really related.
He's keeping it alive.
Yeah.
In June of 1966, Manson was sent for the second time in his life to Terminal Island in preparation for early release. On March 21st, 1967, his release day, he had spent more than half of his 32 years in prison and other institutions. So I think at 32, he had spent 17 years in prisons or other facilities.
That's crazy. I mean, well, he did seem to really like that life and gravitate towards the structure and stuff like that, because without the structure and left to his own devices.
And that brings to the next point here. He told, when he got out on March 21st, he pretty much told him, like, "I understand it in here. I don't understand it out there. Please don't let me go. I feel like the only thing I'll have is going to be doing these things again."
Right.
Unsuccessfully. So it was too late. He had already been granted parole. He was out and back on his own again. And was not permitted to stay. In April of 1967, he meets Mary Broner, a librarian at Berkeley, the first of his family recruits. Now, this is going to be something you'll notice of Charles pretty often, too. He immediately moves in with her.
He's like a hermit crab.
Yes. Oh, new home. Yes, I take it.
Also, I mean, that was part of his whole manipulation tactics, though. Like, get in, like, "Hey, you see me, 24 hours a day. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not shady. I'm here all the time, man.
I'm never gone. It's like I don't have my own home."
Yeah.
So in May of 1967, he picks up 18-year-old Lynette Fromm. They would call her Squeaky later, but Squeaky Fromm is what she's mostly known by in the media. They pick her up on Venice Beach, and Charles brings her back to Mary's house. He meets Ruth Ann Morehouse when her father, Dean, picks him up hitchhiking and brings him over for dinner. So Dean, the father...
Yeah.
Picks up Charles. "Man, hey, you look like you've had a long day. Like, why don't you come over to my house for dinner? I'll put you up for a little. I'll get you some food, and, you can go on your way from there. I'll drop you off somewhere."
He seems like a nice soul. Hey, thanks, man. You seem all right, too. You seem all right.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to run off with your daughter, Ruth Ann.
I'll just take her off your hands, man.
So Ruth Ann runs off with Charles, but Ruth Ann is very much underage at this time. So when the cops catch up to him, he gives his occupation appropriately as minister. Charles knows.
"Hey, man, I'm Father Charles Manson." I think he's probably even when he was younger, because I saw pictures of him when he was young.
Yeah,
I think even then he had the least trustworthy face.
Well, and I believe he's also 5'4". So he's just a tiny little guy. Not to say that someone 5'4" is non-trustworthy, but you stand out.
I don't know, man. He's just...
Is this a leprechaun? So we're kind of blowing through the creation of the family here a little bit. It is important, but you watch one documentary on this and you'll know that. So I don't need to bring you the same facts you guys have heard a million times about the case, but it's starting now. May of 67. I can tell you right now, the Sharon Tate murder is going to happen in August of 69.
Yeah, so you're ramping up real quick.
Real quick. He gets released March 21st, 1967, August 9th, 1969. So 2 years, 5 months later, the family has come, it has gone, it has murdered.
Yeah. It doesn't take much.
It does not take much. Well, at least when Charles is leading the way, huh?
Yeah, well, because, I don't know. He was a psychopath, but he was also a sociopath, and he didn't seem to really feel empathy for other people.
That's one thing is if you listen to the last podcast episodes, they talk about a lot from the book in his own words that Charles would often like forget that they had, that they had killed a guy or that they were using stolen credit cards or, that they were kind of like a criminal group living on the fringe. It just felt so normal and so, easy to him that he would forget what they were actually doing.
Yeah,
so.
and the last podcast guys were like, oh, well, he just wanted to hang out in the desert and be groovy and build dune buggies. And it's like, no, he was prepping, man.
Yeah, he was prepping the whole time. And we don't get too much into the race wars thing either. And I know that's kind of, again, it's a big part of it. But again, the part that's been reported a million times, that's the whole basis of Charles Manson building his family is to be the leaders of the world after a race war. They wanted to start a race war.
Yeah.
And while the black man was eradicating the white man, they would be hiding underground in the desert. And then the black man would attempt to run the government and not be able to do it because of their inexperience, according to Charles Manson and family. And they would emerge from the desert as saviors. And the black man would say, there they are, some white people to run the government for us.
Can you just imagine sitting in the desert while Charles Manson sits next to you on LSD and tells you this story?
He's just preaching this to you.
Yeah, standing up on a rock. And then they'll look at me, man, and they'll be like, you're the one, you're the guy.
Well, speaking of the LSD, too, there's a lot of people that say that Charles would make sure that everybody was administered their LSD himself and then maybe not even take any himself or take a quarter of a tab or not to say that he didn't do LSD.
I was going to say there was like a 4-year period there where he did nothing but LSD.
Right. But I think when he was doing his programming,
yeah, and
he was staying on the dry side of it. So, it's the summer of 1967 now. More troubled young girls are going to follow. 19-year-old Patricia Krenwinkel and 20-year-old Susan Atkins. Sexy Sadie, I believe she goes by later. And Patricia Krenwinkel, I think it's the nickname Big Patty.
Yeah, so I remember her.
Poor her. Sexy Sadie and Big Patty. He meets them both in Haight-Ashbury, and that's kind of a big part of this too. So he's learned to play guitar from an I think they said like a Dust Bowl era gangster who's got this very like steel guitar style and taught Charles to play. So that was one thing they said about Charles' music, because Charles' end goal in all of this is to become a rock star. That's the end all be all.
Well, he wanted to start the whole race war thing, and then if that didn't pan out, his fallback was to be just a rock god.
If you can't start a race war, back it up with being a rock star.
Yeah, absolutely. He just wanted to be the guy, you know.
He's the guy for a minute there, I guess, buddy. All right there. So he's kind of going around now. Haight-Ashbury is kind of a hub because Haight-Ashbury was like the center of love for the longest time. It was the flower power.
Yeah, exactly. It was the hippie central of the 60s.
People were smoking weed and eating mushrooms and doing acid and being psychedelic. And then, it said that, within just 2 or 3 years, it became a very grungy, filthy place. All of the psychedelics had been replaced with speed. And so it was just a lot of crust punks and speed heads. And so a lot of people were still like...
It was perfect for the time, but after time, it was far from perfect.
People were fulfilling their dreams still of coming to Haight-Ashbury to like see the love and getting there and realizing that
getting mugged.
Yeah, oh shit, it's actually just full of a bunch of people with no front teeth.
This guy just told me he wanted all my crank. I don't even know what crank is, man.
So it's gonna keep ramping up. It's just like you said. Mary, the librarian that he met a little earlier, becomes pregnant as well in the summer of 67. In the fall of 1967, Charlie packs all the ladies into a VW minibus and moves to L.A. Heading to L.A. This is where he wants to become a star, Greg. This is where he knew he needed to be.
He's going to do it.
If he was going to do it. He looks to make connections in the music world, offering his girls as bait to lure the promising males. Kind of what Greg was saying earlier. He was just always the guy who had the drugs and had the girls. You wanted drugs and girls, he just made sure that Charles was around. He was a little weird and creepy and kind of off-putting to have around, but
But he had the
he
drugs
was generally
and the girls,
outnumbered,
so.
right? But he had the girls. So he's looking to make the connections within the music world. He sends his girls to just kind of wander around LA and Topanga. They are looking for celebrities, but they're also scrounging food from dumpsters. So this is how they're living, you know.
The ladies are out doing the hunting and gathering, and Charles is kicking it in a van somewhere.
Doing acid, playing the guitar.
Listen, take this tape to the studio and just tell him how good it is.
So he gets his first record company audition. He gets a 3-hour session, but he doesn't get signed off of it. So at this time, Susan Atkins becomes pregnant as well. And pretty much at this point, the group is just really about fucking.
Yeah.
Right? It's like Charles is the one. I think one of the things was he meets Patricia Krenwinkel. He meets Big Patty. And he told her something like, "You're ugly. I'm ugly. We're the only two that's going to tell each other we're beautiful." And she's like, "So a couple hours later, I slept with him." And that was how Big Patty got inaugurated into the family.
Well, yeah, and that's part of his, like, trying to appeal to every man brainwashing tactics. Like, just listen, man, we're like the same.
There was the Diane Sawyer interview that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Where he was saying, you know why the women love me? Honestly? And she's like, "No, I'd love to know." And he's like, "I'm good at the fucking."
Yeah.
Like, it's just, he's so brash and so, but at this time, that's kind of, there isn't a mission statement.
That.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So in March of 1968, Mary, the librarian, gives birth to a son. He's going to be the first of the babies born within the family. Charlie gives the baby the name Valentine or Valentine after the hero of A Stranger in a Strange Land. A couple of the girls meet Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who picks them up from hitchhiking on the Sunset Strip. Now, again, there's also 2 stories on this, too. Mm-hmm. One is that Dennis Wilson picked some of Charlie's girls up hitchhiking. Very plausible. Dennis Wilson was I believe the last podcast guy said that he was the least talented, and so therefore they would let him disappear for weeks or months at a time. So he had the money, and he just got to kind of fuck around and live it up and pick up, Manson
never
hot
be
hitchhikers.
as good as Brian.
He'll never be as good as Brian.
Even if Brian stays in bed for months at a time.
Yeah, poor Dennis. So he picks up the hitchhikers, or in Charles' version, I believe they met at a party, and
that's the version that I've heard. I'm inclined to not believe a single thing that Charles Manson says. So
I think that would be a good stance to take at this point. But at any rate, it is valid. They do meet Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. The girls go, and Dennis takes them back to his mansion. So he's got these 2 girls there, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to go to the studio. You guys make yourself comfortable. I'll be back later, You
guys just slip into something a little more comfortable."
Yeah, so when he gets back, the house is full of homeless people called the Manson family. So the 2 girls have moved in the rest of the Mansons, Charles included, because they've now met, they've got a place to be.
Yeah. Now they have a setup, a home base, if you will.
Right. So in knowing Dennis Wilson, they're able to meet somebody named Terry Melcher. Now, Terry Melcher was like a 60s music god, and if it weren't for copyrights, we'd play you some of the songs, but some of the, like, probably one of the more famous ones he, like, created the group of and produced was Turn, Turn, Turn.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were a few other ones, and I can't remember honestly right off the top of my head, but that's the one that stands out to me. It's like, if you know 60s music, you've heard. Yeah. Don't sing it. We can't afford it.
I can't sing anyway.
So he meets Terry Melcher. He really wants to impress him. He knows that Terry Melcher can build him into what it is. And I think we could say right now that don't be mistaken. Charles was looked at. He was not a nobody. He wasn't a guy with a dream he could not accomplish. He was close, I think, and it just didn't quite work out for him. So Charlie does more studio sessions with Dennis, hoping for a record deal with the Beach Boys label. So Terry Melcher is there. Brian Wilson is there. Apparently, Brian Wilson not very impressed with what the family can do. Now the family, a couple dozen strong. I think they said at one point they got up to 30.
I was going to say I thought it was 30 or 32.
Yeah, they move out to Spahn Ranch, which is a movie set owned by elderly George Spahn. So this movie set was used for pretty much all Westerns filmed, TV show or movie in like the 50s and early 60s. So they're just like living out in this kind of like decrepit movie set buildings.
I like that. I like to think that, you know, like Charlie slept in the saloon like upstairs and
right. Do you think anybody reenacted the like fall over the saloon balcony thing? Put some mattresses down there, guys. I want to do the fall down thing.
I think they did against their will. I think Charlie was like, "Look, it's like an old Western," and just like grabbed him by the ankles and whoop up over the handrail.
So they all did stay out in those kind of beat down, very, you know, probably non-insulated walls, just old beat up movie set buildings. But Squeaky Fromm decided to get herself on the inside. So she got a bedroom inside the main house. She got a bathroom. All of that in exchange for just sleeping with legally blind George Spahn.
There you go.
So what, you know, I guess if you got it, flaunt
I was going to say, if you got a hand to play it.
Yeah. So September 1968, the Beach Boys record a song called it's called Never Learn Not to Love. So this song is essentially a song called Cease to Exist that Dennis Wilson got from Charles Manson. This is like all corroborated now.
Yeah.
They changed up most of the lyrics and kind of reworked the song, but the melody is the same. And this song that they recorded, it's like a mediocre Beach Boy song, which all of them are, unless they're one of the 4 non-mediocre Beach Boy songs. And
anything off Pet Sounds.
and they record a Charles Manson song for all intents and purposes, but Charles is not credited at all for the writing of the song. So it's on the album 2020. It comes out in December on the B side to Bluebirds Over the Mountain, which peaks on the charts at number 61.
Woo!
It doesn't sound that impressive, but it was on the charts.
Absolutely.
It's top 100. March of 1969, nothing ever came of this as far as I can tell. It's been corroborated now. Charles did write the song. Charles obviously never got any money for it or anything like that.
What's he going to do with it?
Right. So in March of 69, angry at Terry Melcher's failure to deliver a record contract, Charles goes to Melcher's house in Cielo Drive, unaware that Melcher has already moved out. He shows up in the middle of a party given by one of the new residents, Sharon Tate.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, one thing about this is Terry Melcher, Charles Manson had a way of just schmoozing his way into everybody's life. And
I told you he's charismatic.
Yes, and Terry Melcher knew that as a producer of music and somebody who was in the industry, he had to keep everybody at an arm's length, and he couldn't let people in so easily. So Charles hated that. It was it was a challenge. He said there was even one time where Dennis, Terry, and Charles all drove up to Cielo Drive to Terry's house, and Terry didn't invite them in. So Charles was there. He knew that all he needed was some time, and he could get on Terry's good side. And Terry did not invite them in.
Yeah, well, I mean, just a dude showing up out of nowhere probably wouldn't invite him in either.
Yeah, truth. Okay, yep. Okay, right there. So Tex Watson, while living at the ranch, sets up a drug burn. Now, we haven't talked about Tex Watson yet, but Tex, his first name is also Charles. Tex is like a small town boy from Texas. He's like the all-American boy, football player, prom king, and somehow kind of falls in love with the hippie movement, gets linked up out on Haight-Ashbury, gets linked up with the Manson family.
He just did it. He made all the wrong choices. He did it all wrong.
Right. And he was dedicated to the Manson family once he gets there. So on July 1st, 1969, Tex sets up a drug burn. So a drug burn, he's going to, offer to buy or sell something that he does not have. He makes a deal to sell 25 kilos of pot he does not have, hustling $2,500 out of a dealer named Bernard Lots of Papa Crow. 1969, 2,500. We're probably talking 10 grand, right? Something in that region. So Watson takes the money and runs. When Crow demands his money back, Manson goes and meets up with Crow because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Lots of Papa comes and takes Sexy Sadie, I think, and says, like, I'm going to kill her if you don't come bring me my money. So Charles Manson goes over there, and he tries to kind of talk his way out of it at first, and Lots of Papa just goes at him. So Charles has brought a gun, and Charles pulls the trigger of the gun, and click, 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 and Lots of Papa's like, ha, goes to pick him up, and Charles keeps pulling it, and apparently there were 2 bullets in the gun, and he was able to get one off into Lots of Papa's stomach.
So real quick, you're about 16,700 for that 2,500 in 1969.
Yes, there you go. So it wasn't, it was
nothing to laugh at. That's 16 grand's.
Yeah, almost $17,000.
Yeah.
So Charles shoots Lots of Papa Crow in the stomach, and he goes home that night and hears about a Black Panther leader who has been shot and thrown on the steps of the hospital, and he's now dead. So Charles, in his mind, his narcissistic mind, assumes that the black man, Lots of Papa, he is shot this evening, must be that leader of the Black Panthers.
Right.
So he thinks that the Black Panthers are going to be coming after him pretty soon because he's getting the race war started a little earlier than he anticipated, I think.
I didn't mean to kick it off yet, guys.
Yeah, even though they're out kind of doing this, like you said, preparation. They're stockpiling gasoline and generators and turning VW mini buses into dune buggies.
Hell yeah, dude.
So,
they were prepping super hard, like you said, stockpiling food and shit. That's I mean, that was the beginning stages of the bunker. That's how I got here.
Exactly. So July 25th, Bobby Busoli, a friend of Charlie's, gets burned in another drug deal gone bad, this one involving Gary Hinman and a biker gang, the Straight Satans.
That's a cool name.
Straight Satan, homie.
That's a rad name.
Yeah, so he's burned for $1,000, and Busoli goes to Hinman's home with a handgun and a knife and a few of the Charles Manson family accomplices. Atkins, Brunner, Bruce Davis, and Manson, who cuts off Hinman's ear. After Busoli shoots him dead, Atkins writes, "Political piggy" on the wall in Hinman's blood. So this is the first direct death, correlated to the Manson family. They're all there. Charles cut off his ear, which is about as intense as Charles is going to get for the rest of all of this.
Yeah.
He didn't quite have it in him.
He didn't have the stomach for it.
After the police find Hinman's body, Busoli tries to make his getaway in the dead man's car, which police catch him on the highway, and they also find a bloody knife hidden in the tire well. Busoli is booked for Hinman's murder. Let's take a little break right here before it gets a little real. You know us, we don't really ever go into too many details about these bloody crimes, and that's not going to change here, but it is still pretty heavy. So we're going to take a little break. I hate to even say it going into it, but come back or we'll kill you.
Or the Mansons will kill you. Truth.
And he had a gun? Yeah. Shotgun. And a motorcycle in Venice, California. I ride in the dark. I'm up on the moon. Dune buggy. And Apollo's space. NATO. Road map. Money. My redwood, my redwood, I love you, I love you. Already all the way to Texas, head blue star, shine blue. B section down on my main line. Over on B section on my soul rolling wine. Oh, rolling soul, rolling Saint Center's on Saint Martin on that old guitar. Oh, up on that highway, rolling hard. Just a hobo rolling hard, rolling on down to Dixie. I'm in the pickup truck. I got a back tire on, don't give a fuck. Rolling on a bottle of whiskey, rolling down Jack Daniel, rolling Jack Daniel, rolling Jack Daniels on. I'm up on Harley, got that eagle, got that wiggle, goddamn angels, got that thunder down from under, and I'm walking him on now.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 45. We're here in the bunker still, trying to decide if I'm ever going to leave again. Can I just live in the bunker with you, Greg?
Well, you know where it is now, so...
You're actually never allowed to leave. So, as is with tradition on the show, we're going to talk about some murders, but we're not going to talk about too much detail. There's a lot of detail on these. You can read or hear spoken to you a step-by-step manual, essentially, on how this murder was played out and completed. So I'm not going to get real deep into it. I'm just going to say that there were some members of the family, and from what I understand, none of them knew going into this day even that they were going to be part of this night. There wasn't some great, huge plan. In fact, Big Patty said she was like out in a field trying to shake a bad acid trip.
I was going to say they were just like hanging out doing acid all day. Like
and Charlie said, "Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night."
Setting it off.
Yeah,
and they had a name for this plan, for the upending of society that they were going to do.
It was the beginning of them getting the race wars going. It was the kickoff of his plan.
Yeah,
this was the night. It all came to an end. So Charles collects his group led by Tex Watson. It's also going to be Sexy Sadie, Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian is going to drive, and Big Patty. So Patricia Krenwinkel is going to go as well. They leave from Spawn Ranch and they go to Terry Melcher's old house. Now, again, we just talked about it before the break. Charles knows that Terry Melcher no longer lives in this home, but there's just so much residual hatred.
Yeah, it's almost like muscle memory. That's where he was able to go before, so he keeps going back there because it's familiar and that he feels that probably gives him the upper hand.
Right. So in the house was four people. One man was out in the driveway. He was killed as the Manson family arrived. In the house were four additional people, one being actress Sharon Tate. She was kind of blowing up at the time, from what it seems. She had been in several movies and I believe some TV shows, but she was kind of making a name for herself at this point. So
she was on the rising stars.
She
list.
She's also married to director, filmmaker Roman Polanski.
Well, and he's kind of got a checkered past there.
I think his checkered past came after this, though, if I'm not mistaken.
It could, but I just...
Yeah, Roman Polanski's not a great dude either, from what it seems. But at this time, I don't think we know this of him. So she's married to Roman Polanski. She's 8 months pregnant. She will be killed. Abigail Folger would also be killed.
If that name sounds familiar, it's because she was set to inherit the Folgers coffee dynasty. Which, I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. Her last name was Folger. Like, that was their thing. Right. And so she was all queued up in line for that, which sucks.
Yes. So the young man who was killed in the driveway, his name was Stephen Parent, and apparently he was not even involved in the Sharon Tate visit at all. He was visiting somebody in the guest house of the home. So he was hanging out in his car. Who knows? Maybe he had just gotten in his car. It's 1969, so he wasn't looking down at his cell phone. But he's sitting out in the car as the Manson family arrives, and they do kill him, Stephen Parent. Also in the house, like I said, the 8-month pregnant Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger. They kill Wojtek Frykowski and Jay Sebring, who's a famed hairstylist. So they kill very, to the industry and to the area, very important people.
Yeah.
Hollywood elite.
They struck a mighty first blow for their movement.
Right.
And Big Patty, in all her infinite wisdom, she used the blood of the victims to write on the, was it the wall or the refrigerator?
Yes. The refrigerator.
Yeah, she wrote Helter Skelter, which was what they were calling their plan. That was the upending of society. That was that race war that they wanted. That was
Based off of a Beatles song.
Yeah. And so she wrote Helter Skelter, and unfortunately for her, she couldn't spell very well, so it came out Heelter Skelter, and just really made him look dumb from the get-go.
I mean, if they weren't on the wrong side of history before that.
Grammatical errors are just inexcusable.
So that's August 9th. The next night, August 10th, a few more of the family will go, and they will kill, I believe, grocery store owner Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. Charles knew where this house was because he had been at a party at a house nearby, and he just didn't like how nice of a house this was. You know, that was kind of
that was his. He was like, all right, this house is nice. We need to go Manson it up a little bit.
Right. And again, there are some very graphic details in this killing. I want to say they were stabbed together a cumulative something 56 times.
Yeah, it was a pretty steep number.
Right. I don't want to. I don't that's not what this show's for. I don't care too much for that. Let's get past it. We know it's out there. The information. If it were a serial killer like Sean Gillis, where there's not a lot out there, I think I gave a little more detail than I normally would in that episode.
Yeah.
This is out there. You guys want to know the graphic, crazy details? Just type in Charles Manson to Google. You will find it.
I'm pretty sure you can even find the crime scene photos if you want to go that far.
You can. So August 16th, less than a week later, a probably very nervous Charles Manson is at the ranch as the police are there raiding it, looking for the stolen vehicles. The charges get dropped just a few days later as they do recover some of the stolen vehicles there. How fucking lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess luck might not even be what you call it. But it is, though, right?
Yeah.
Sheer luck, it seems. So the LAPD continues to treat the Cielo and Waverly killings as unrelated. So those are the street names. So the LaBianca and the Tate murders. They don't believe that they're, even though the LaBianca murder as well, I think they put something like pig in blood or something.
Yeah.
So how would you not connect two murders where words are written in blood on the wall?
Copycat. I mean, they think maybe it's a copycat, or maybe it's
I think that was one of the big leading theories.
Yeah, because they didn't write the same thing. Maybe they talked about a message being written on the wall in blood, but they didn't talk about what the message was. So whoever went out, or so when they changed the message, they were like, it's got to be a different person.
But the next night,
yeah,
I don't know. Well,
it's the groovy 60s, man.
Yeah. So on August 25th, Spawn Ranch foreman Shorty Shea is found murdered. So things are kind of going down around the Manson family at this point. And this is kind of that point, too, where they start kind of getting real loose. Like I said, Charles said that he was forgetting that they killed people and that they had the stolen credit cards they were using and things like that. So it's all kind of a blur to Charles, or at this point, people are referring to him as Jesus Christ God. The police returned to Spawn Ranch, arresting 27 people for car theft on October 10th and 12th. Manson is booked under the name Manson, Charles M., a.k.a. Jesus Christ God.
Do you suppose he hyphenated that last part, or was it Jesus Christ, God?
Who knows? But
that's the kind of nickname I need.
We'll see if we can't work that out for you.
Get it trending, people.
In November, Sadie Atkins boasts about the killings to fellow prisoners who turn her in, providing the first big break in the case. So she's in prison for these car thefts, and she's telling people like, I fucking killed the Sharon Tate, blah 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 blah. Danny DiCarlo from the Straight Satans talks to police as well. Vincent Belagosi, an LA deputy district attorney, takes over as the prosecutor for the case. And back home in Texas, Charles Tex Watson surrenders to the local sheriff, his cousin.
Ooh, how cruel.
Right. He stayed in Texas for almost a year before turning himself in.
Well, I mean, that seems like a cruel twist of fate. Like your cousin being like, "All right, now, Tex, just turn yourself in. We won't tell Mama.
Put your hands behind your back, Mama.
I killed Dean."
So, December 4th, Susan Atkins agrees to cooperate and makes a deal with prosecutors. Her attorney negotiates a lucrative book contract at this time as well, and over the following days, her grand jury testimony makes it into the newspapers. So, Susan Atkins making a name for herself, huh? December 19th, Life magazine does a cover story on Charles Manson just in time for Christmas, giving him his first taste of nationwide notoriety. Same time, Life presents the prosecutor's version of the murders, introducing America to the official story of Charles Manson and Helter Skelter. In July, the trial...
Helter Skelter.
Yeah, excuse me. In July, the trial begins, and a media circus is around Manson, Atkins, Van Houten, and Krenwinkel just acting up in court together. There's interviews from like 1994, I want to say it is, where Patricia Krenwinkel talks about how Charles would give them things to do each day, to say, to like make, hand signals to do, certain things to do, like just to sort of disrupt the flow of being in court together.
He wanted chaos, man. He wanted anarchy.
Yes, he wanted to watch the world burn. So at one point, Manson carves an X into his forehead, announcing, quote, "I have X'd myself from the world. No man or lawyer is speaking for me." And the girls, in return, also give themselves 3 X's on their own foreheads. Now, this is where later Charles is going to turn this into a swastika as we know it now. But
You got to keep building.
Mm-hmm. On August 3rd of the following year, President Nixon, giving a speech in Denver, brings up Charles Manson, complaining that the liberal media is trying to glorify Manson and other criminals. Nixon said, quote, "Here's a man who was guilty, directly or indirectly, of 8 murders without reason. Prosecutors hope to keep the jury from finding out to avoid a mistrial, but in court, Manson flashes them a copy of the Los Angeles Times headline, 'Manson Guilty,' Nixon declares. The next day, Manson waves his own sign, which says, 'Nixon Guilty.'"
Yeah, so he's just a troll. That's what he is.
100%. I mean, it's like when someone says, whatever, like, dude, you're being lazy. It's like, you're being lazy today.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you are guilty.
No, you.
Charles Manson is guilty. Richard Nixon is guilty.
No, you. Yeah, I mean, that's an appropriate response to Richard Nixon, though. I mean, if it were me, I probably wouldn't have the highest opinion of Nixon. I'm not saying he's as bad as Manson, but
Dick Nixon not high on your list.
yeah, Tricky Dick Nixon.
So, Richard Nixon does not speak very highly of him.
I feel like that was probably mutual.
Yeah, you're probably right. So, he puts up his childish sign that Nixon is guilty. August 13, Linda Kasabian is granted immunity in return for her testimony. She drove, I believe, on both nights. January 25th, 1971, so about a year and a half later. After 10 days of deliberation, the jury finds all 4 defendants guilty on all counts, so all 3 of the women and Charles. The defendants get the death sentence, which is later commuted to life in prison because the U.S. Senate overturned the death penalty.
Right.
Wonderful. In November of 1974, Vincent Bugliosi, I think that's it, Bugliosi becomes a best-selling author when Helter Skelter with help from the co-writer Kurt Gentry. He presents it as a gory pulp thriller starring the heroic investigator who solves the case of a Beatles-crazed hippie murder cult. Sound familiar?
A little.
It becomes the
He
all-time...
didn't mention the Dune buggies, though.
Right. It becomes the all-time biggest true crime book, giving a permanent superstar status to both Bugalosi and Manson. September 5th, 1975. You remember Squeaky Fromm?
Oh, yeah. Who could forget Squeaky?
Well, Squeaky is wearing a red nun's habit and points a Colt 45 at President Gerald Ford on his way to the California state capitol. The gun does not go off.
That sounds like a bad habit.
Right. She makes the cover of Time magazine with the headline, "The Girl Who Almost Killed Ford." Coming
That's a killer headline.
Yeah. Coming right after Helter Skelter, this incident establishes the Manson story as the world has known it ever since.
Huh.
So that's really it. I have some Where Are They Now?
Yeah.
Patricia Krenwinkel, Big Patty, a 69-year-old, remains at the California Institution for Women. On the first day of the killing spree, she stabbed Abigail Folger 28 times. She said in court testimony. During the second night, Krenwinkel testified that she stabbed Rosemary LaBianca while the victim pleaded for the life of her husband, Lino LaBianca. Krenwinkel said that she later scrawled "Death to Pigs" on the wall with the blood of Lino LaBianca. She was denied parole for the 14th time in June of 2017. She will be eligible for consideration again in 5 years, June of 2022.
Jesus, dude. Like, at what point are you just like, I'm probably not gonna get parole?
Right. Tex Watson is one of the chief participants we talked about in the Manson family murders. He was convicted of 7 counts of first-degree murder. He was involved in both killings at the Tate and LaBianca residences, and at the age of 71 remains in prison and has been denied parole 17 times.
So he just doesn't get the message either.
Leslie Van Houten was the youngest of Manson's followers at 19 when this all happened. She participated in the killings of the LaBiancas. She was not involved in the murder at the Tate residence, but Van Houten, who is now 68, has been denied parole 19 times and remains at the California Institution for Women. In September, a 2-person state commission panel granted Van Houten parole for what would be the second time, but that decision requires legal review and a decision by California Governor Jerry Brown. He had rejected parole for her last year, saying that she currently poses an unreasonable danger to society.
That's fair enough.
So she's been granted actually twice and turned down by Jerry Brown twice. So let's talk about the one person who's out of prison, even though she was not ever a part of the murders, but she did point a gun at Gerald Ford, Lynette Squeaky Fromm. She was convicted in 1975 of pointing that gun at then-President Gerald Ford. She was sentenced to life in prison, but was then released on parole after serving 34 years in 2009.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for just pointing the gun at him.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty serious crime, though.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll round off the list with the ones that are dead. Susan Atkins, Sexy Sadie. She was involved in the Tate and LaBianca deaths, had been California's longest-serving female inmate until her death in 2009. She had terminal brain cancer, and by her own admission, she held down and stabbed Tate, who was then 8 months pregnant, as the actress pleaded for mercy. Atkins also was convicted in the killings of the LaBiancas and the earlier murder of the music teacher. Lastly on the list, of course, Charles Manson, the wild-eyed 1960s cult leader whose followers committed heinous crimes that terrorized Los Angeles and shocked the nation. He died Sunday, November 19th, 2017, of natural causes, according to the California Department of Corrections. He was 83 years old.
Yeah. I'm surprised he lasted that long, to be totally honest. Like,
I think he thrived in prison.
Yeah, well, he like we said, he needed the structure, he needed the regiment, he needed that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that for him to be a serial killer, he would actually have to have killed somebody, and the closest he got was when he gut shot that guy.
Right.
He never actually killed anybody. He was just like, go do it, and they went and did it.
I want to say that there was a situation in which he did go and try, besides the shooting in the stomach, where he tried to kind of psych himself up for it and couldn't get it done as well.
Yeah, I remember that one where he just kind of like chickened out.
So that's kind of it. He's and you know, all throughout he never took the blame either.
Oh no.
It was always, I never told anybody to do anything. They all acted as they wanted to act, and I was simply there. And I never told any of them to do any of the things that they did. They all did exactly what they wanted to do.
They were all acting on their own accord.
Yeah. So,
but they weren't.
And that was, you know, even like Leslie Van Houten was saying, you know, I've taken responsibility for what I did. I deserve to be here. But still to this day, Charles has not.
Until he died.
And yeah, right. And she was just, I mean, this was like a 1994 interview, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you had only kind of were aware of the Charles Manson case, but none of the details, look into it. There's just so much. It's never ending. You could probably go weeks, and the information is there.
It's pretty wild and crazy.
Documentaries. There are tons of websites. There are podcasts. You can
pretty
hear
gory too.
It is pretty gory too. So just be prepared if you're going to jump into those crime scene photos. So, anything on the way out, Greg?
No, I don't really have anything. That's just Charles Manson's a lot, man. He was a crazy little angry, trippy psychopath.
Yeah, for sure. So if we missed anything big that you guys feel like we need to mention, let us know. You can always reach out to us in many ways. You can do it on Facebook at Serial Chillers Podcast. There's a Facebook group too. It's the Serial Chillers Podcast. Instagram is at Serial Chillers Podcast. Twitter is at Chillers Podcast. You could buy merch at serialchillerspodcast.threadless.com. And you can also give to the show in many ways. One of them is the Patreon. That is the way that we've been doing it so well for so long. You can give as little as $1 a month to the show, and you can do that at patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast. Reach out, guys. We love hearing from you. You can even text the show 1-805-666-2513. Email Greg. Email me. Let us know how we did. That's really all we got tonight, right? Charles Manson was, as I say it a lot, a fuckface.
Yes.
And most of his family was
quote,
as well.
Unquote, family.
Right. Sounds like most of his family was as well too. So we'll just keep it running. Not a good dude. Don't do what Charles Manson did. Last chance, Greg. Anything?
No, I'm glad you stopped by the bunker. This should happen more often. I should build a closer bunker, like in the middle, and
a bunker between the bunker and my bunker.
Yeah.
Oh.
Call it the halfway bunker.
The halfway bunker. I like it. We got to work out the logistics. So Greg and I are going to go do that.
Make it happen with the Patreon.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 45 of the Serial Chillers Podcast. And remember, don't talk to strangers.
Especially trippy.
Boy.
5-4.
The black pirate lives only in the darkness, lives only in the darkness, lives only in the darkness of your soul and mind. The black pirate, that black pirate.
All right, that was episode 45. Thank you guys so much for sticking in there with us. As we all know, it is not a mystery to anybody, Charles Manson was a crazy shitbag who wrote some folk music and started probably one of the most successful murderous cults besides Jonestown. It really kicked off kind of a craze. So, the cult mentality was dangerous. It still remains that way. Don't join a cult. If you need some help, send us an email or get us on Instagram. I don't know. Just try not to join cults. So, if you have any questions about the episode, if you have anything you'd like to add, any corrections you'd like to make about this one or future episodes, or questions and comments about this one, please reach out. You can do it in so many ways. Facebook, as always, Serial Chillers Podcast. There's also a Facebook group, which is the Serial Chillers Podcast. It's a closed group. Wait for acceptance. We'll get you in real quick. We're trying to get some engagement there, guys. We've been looking for some fun stuff to put on there and really reach out to you guys and continue to do what you guys have done as rad fans. The Instagram at Serial Chillers Podcast. Twitter is at Chillers Podcast. The email, serialchillerspodcast@gmail.com. Call or text the show, 1-805-666-2513. The Serial Chillers Podcast.threadless.com is a great place to get any Serial Chillers merchandise. And lastly, patreon.com/Serial Chillers Podcast is the place where you can give as little as $1 a month to the show to keep the wheels on spinning. We have done a drawing now for $100, and every time we bump up to certain levels, we're doing drawings, giving back to the people that give to us. That's important to Greg and I. So that's kind of a big thing. Charles Manson was a show that we've been waiting to do, and we hope we did it justice. We hope you guys enjoyed. Give to the Patreon if you can. Remember, again, the merchandise, serialchillerspodcast.threadless.com. Lastly, remember, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah, I remember in my mind's patterns the love you gave to me. I seen there new soul, the bird that flies so free. I loved you in the night, lonesome in the shadows of the cage. Cage on the cage, rows of cages where a man lives in his fear. All the things we do, we try the best we can. Do the best we can every day, one day, one day, one day, one day at a time. Sunshine, one day at a time. Sunshine, sunshine, one day at a time. So and reggae c'est dingue like sous waiting les sont là pour relève party con un mot on laisse les montagnes en Argentina en caballos ahorita o corazón vivida en Brasilia con que si Jesus in Kawachu say yeah your home sunshine beautiful eyes that can't live without your love. I see my big old horse now, my big old thunder man. He's the best of the God. He's a blue ribbon and a bugler can. He's the thunder of the general, on the general great army of God, and wrote a song. God spared his life for something, but we know it, we can see it, and we're bringing that big brother on home. Bringing brother on home now. Bringing my brothers on home. Taking my soldiers down to the edge of town where we can be left alone. Ride on the darkness in the black pine.